Welcome to On With The Show, where we delve into the intriguing stories that have shaped the world of performing arts. I'm your host, Leo Sullivan. Join me as we explore the apocalyptic events of Woodstock 1999, a music festival homage to its 1969 predecessor that became the day the 90's died. So, without further ado, let's dive into the spotlight and explore the stories behind the curtain. This is On With The Show. It's July, and the atmosphere at Griffiths Air Force Base is intense. It's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, large areas of concrete and asphalt with little or no shade. There's a 2-mile walk from east to west, and water is in limited supply and contaminated with feces. Fires rage as missiles fly through the air. A communication is received noting that personal safety is no longer guaranteed. It's time to evacuate. But this isn't a war zone. This is Woodstock 99. Woodstock 99 was the grandchild of the original Woodstock in 1969. Michael Lang, one of the organisers of the original Woodstock Festival and Woodstock 94, agreed to partner with New Jersey concert promoter John Scher for a 30th anniversary festival. A third Woodstock festival was considered a risky proposition after a rain squall at the Woodstock 94, later dubbed Mudstock, led to a large financial loss and negative press coverage. Woodstock 1999 was conceived and executed as a commercial venture with dozens of corporate sponsors and included the presence of vendor malls, ATMs and email stations. Advance tickets for the event were priced at $150, the equivalent to $290 in 2025, plus service charges. Tickets purchased at the gate cost $180, equivalent to $348 in 2025. Ticket sales were advertised as being capped at 250,000. A total of 186,983 tickets were sold, according to reports shortly after the festival, with a gross take of just shy of $29 million. Woodstock 1999 was also on pay-per-view television, with early reports of 500,000 purchases of the $59.95 simulcast passes, with revenues estimated at up to $30 million. Numerous budget cuts were made during the hiring and delegation process for the concession vendors. Organisers leased services from numerous subcontractors, whose contracts gave them complete control of pricing. Security protocols prohibited festival goers from bringing their own food and water bottles. Instead, they had to purchase food from on-site vendors, even though most of the available snacks, meals, and refreshments were incredibly expensive. It was so hot that you literally needed to drink a gallon of water an hour to stay hydrated, said Sarah, who attended Woodstock 99 as a teenager. There were fountains there, but there was at least a 25-minute wait. The average price for a bottle of water in the late 90s was around 65 cents. At Woodstock 99, however, a single bottle cost $4, $7.73 in 2025, which then went up to $12, the equivalent to $23.19 in 2025, when vendors ran low on stock. Per old footage featured in the Netflix documentary Trainwreck Woodstock 99, one concert goer complained that a small drink and a salad cost $9. As an alternative, festival goers faced a long walk or cramped travel via looping buses to Rome's modest shopping areas, where stores had long lines and low stock. Concert goers reported that security were keen to confiscate food and drink, but often overlooked or were bribed to ignore attendees bringing in drugs. Several members of the festival's production team, including Colin Spear, Lee Rosenblatt, and Pilar Law, noted that the price hikes were prompted by the Woodstock founders and organisers believing that they were hell-bent on making a considerable profit. Especially after their previous revival, Woodstock 94 tanked financially due to overcrowding and security issues. It became clear that Woodstock 99 was no longer emulating the peace, love and flower power vibes established by the original Woodstock. It was purely a money-making venture. Rosenblatt said, "That was the moment for me where it stopped becoming about the concert goer or the festival goer experience. It was just cutting budgets. We need to make changes. We're not making profit. Their goal was to make money. All hopes and dreams of peace, love and understanding 1969 went out the window." With about 220,000 people in attendance and another 10,000 working the festival, Woodstock 99 temporarily made the festival site in Rome, New York, the third most populated city in New York State. The festival was held at the former Griffith Air Force Base, a designated Superfund waste cleanup site. The United States Air Force had decommissioned and closed the base in September 1995, and thereafter it was largely unused and in poor condition. In addition to two main stages at the east and west ends, facilities included several alternate stages, a nighttime rave hangar, a sports park, and a film festival sponsored by the Independent Film Channel. Temperatures on the weekend of the festival were in excess of 38 degrees centigrade. The venue included large areas of concrete and asphalt with little or no shade, placing the entire facility within its own heat island. This not only caused temperatures to rise during the day, but also kept them elevated at night. The east and west stages were 2.3 miles or 3.7 kilometers apart, forcing festival goers to walk a long distance across hot concrete surfaces. Camping space across the grassy areas quickly became scarce by the middle of the first day, forcing numerous attendees to camp on the hot asphalt surface. Korn lead singer Jonathan Davis claimed he was suffering severe heat exhaustion following his band's performance. He was briefly given an IV covered with bags of ice and put on oxygen after leaving the stage. In a 2021 interview, Noodles of the band Offspring criticised the facility, saying, "You know, there was a festival ground in Germany that was literally built by Hitler, and we've played there a bunch of times. Great venue, bunch of fun. That airbase was less hospitable than a place built by Nazis." The attendees stood in long lines to access the free water fountains, until frustration led numerous concert goers to break the pipes to provide water to those in the middle of the line. As a result, numerous mud pits began forming around the concert site. The groundwater and soil at the site had been contaminated by heavy metals and toxic chemicals from its time as a military installation, hence its designation as a Superfund cleanup site. The number of portable toilets installed proved insufficient for the number of attendees. The toilets and showers soon became unusable and overflowing as they were never emptied, and people resorted to urinating on the side of the toilets or behind vendor stalls. Excrement from the toilets flowed into the mud pits and camping areas, mixing with the water from the broken pipes. Many attendees began jumping in the mud pits and water troughs to stay cool in the intense heat, unaware of the contamination. This led to many cases of trench mouth and trench foot. The county health department analysed the sample of the free drinking water, finding it to be contaminated with E. coli. The promoters were determined to avoid the gate crashing that had occurred at the previous festival. Lang and Schur characterised the site as defensible, installing a 12-foot peace wall of plywood and steel, and invited numerous volunteers to paint on the sections of the panels. In addition to the wall, approximately 500 New York State police troopers were initially planned to provide security. To further cut costs and avoid the influence of the government or of the police state, according to Lang, organisers did not hire conventional security officers, instead sourcing adolescents and young adults from a nearby job agency to serve as the Peace Patrol. Nearly all of the Peace Patrol officers lacked any prior experience in security or law enforcement. All Peace Patrol officers were unarmed, and most seemed uninterested in performing their duties. Many security employees simply sold their spare security shirts to other concert goers or abandoned their posts entirely. Some Peace Patrol guards alleged that others had utilised their positions to demand sexual favours from women in the audience. Security at Woodstock 99 was kind of a joke, said Tim Healy, a former presenter of MTV. It was kids with yellow t-shirts. In the Netflix documentary, Lang explains his reason for not hiring law enforcement, stating, "We didn't want anybody uniformed or anybody carrying a gun. We didn't want the influences of the government or of the police state or whatever. So the security that we hired, they were not armed. They were Peace Patrol." One of those Peace Patrols was Cody, who was 18 years of age at the time. He signed up to work at Woodstock 99 because the hiring process was quick and simple. All he had to do was sign a form, and the pay was $500. Despite the official title, there was nothing peaceful about the Peace Patrol. Many of the patrols engaged in reckless behaviours, whether it was doing drugs while on the clock or selling their shirts to random festival goers for extra cash. During The Offspring's performance, singer Dexter Holland condemned the crowd's behaviour after witnessing numerous women being groped in the audience. Just because a girl wants to crowd surf, it doesn't give the guys the right to molest them. Holland later told victims of sexual assault in the crowd to confront the perpetrators and grab their fucking balls. At least 5 rapes and numerous other sexual assaults and incidents of sexual harassment at the festival were officially reported, though it's widely believed that a far greater number of unreported incidents occurred. During a post-show rave on Saturday night, a man stole and drove a maintenance truck into the rave hangar through the crowd during Fatboy Slim's set. Staff reported seeing a naked, passed-out young girl in the back of the van, a man looming over her, buckling up his trousers. Fatboy Slim and his entourage were asked to evacuate the premises immediately, fleeing to a nearby airport and flying out the following morning. A volunteer also reported seeing a gang rape during Korn's performance. "At one point, I saw this girl, a very petite girl, maybe 100 pounds, who was body surfing above the crowd, and either fell in or was pulled into the circle in the mosh pit," volunteer Dave Schneider told MTV. These gentlemen, probably in the 25 to 32 age range, looked as though they were holding her down. They were holding her arms. You could see she was struggling. A police investigator told the Washington Post that 2 men cornered a 24-year-old woman from Pittsburgh in the Limp Bizkit mosh pit, assaulting her with their fingers and some type of foreign object before one of them raped her. The police report read, "Due to the congestion of the crowd, she felt that if she yelled for help or fought, She feared she was going to be beaten. The men were never apprehended. Of the 44 people arrested at Woodstock 99, only one was charged with sexual assault. Fred Durst began complaining to the sound technicians after the performance of Limp Bizkit's song Break Stuff, as his microphone was cut while the main sound tower was being evacuated due to ongoing vandalism. Concertgoers began moshing violently, visibly destroying nearby structures and crowd surfing by utilising plywood barriers. Fred Durst addressed the crowd following the song 1999, after being approached by festival staff. "They want us to ask you to mellow out a little bit. They say too many people are getting hurt. Don't let anybody get hurt, but I don't think you should mellow out. Mellowing out? That's what Alanis Morissette had you motherfuckers do. If someone falls, pick 'em up." During the song's breakdown, Durst addressed the crowd. "Time to reach deep down inside and take all that negative energy, and let that shit out of your fucking system. You got girl problems, you got boy problems, you got parent problems, you got boss problems, you got job problems, you got a problem with me, you got a problem with yourself. It's time to take all that negative energy and put it the fuck out." Once the breakdown ended, concertgoers immediately began destroying smaller buildings adjacent to the stage and aggressively moshing or punching each other. A large number of attendees also began ripping plywood off the perimeter fence as they attempted to surf on the broken panels. This resulted in several pieces collapsing, dropping crowd surfers onto other fans. Terrified of the hostile crowd, several stage technicians assigned to cover the central sound tower placed a sign reading "The Alamo" below the cameras. The technicians were eventually ordered by the grounds crew to evacuate their post. Following the conclusion of the song, the broadcast team muted Durst's microphone while medical staff took in numerous injured concertgoers. Durst addressed the crowd again during the performance of Nookie, telling the audience, "We already let all the negative energy out. It's time to reach down and bring that positive energy to this motherfucker. It's time to let yourself go right now, because there are no motherfucking rules out there." Following Nookie, Durst walked to the edge of the stage and asked the crowd to assist him as he attempted to crowd surf on the broken plywood. Security implored him not to, but he was undeterred as he asked the crowd to pass him a panel of plywood, on which he later sang "Faith," closing the band's set. Durst later explained that he had wanted to demonstrate himself enjoying the performance with his audience. Following the set, he was approached by Limp Bizkit manager Peter Katzis and several police officers who informed him that the plywood was ripped off buildings after fans had destroyed multiple structures during his band's performance. John Scher would later vilify Durst for his actions on numerous occasions, noting that numerous staff members had approached Durst between songs, asking him to calm the crowd. Widely blamed for the violence, Durst later stated in an interview, "I didn't see anybody getting hurt. You don't see that. When you're looking out on a sea of people and the stage is 20 feet in the air and you're performing and you're feeling your music, how do you expect us to see something bad going on?" Katzis defended Durst in an interview for the Netflix 2022 documentary miniseries Trainwreck, Woodstock 99, claiming that pointing the finger at Fred is about the last thing anybody should do. There really isn't a way to control 300,000 people. The best thing he could do is put on the best show possible and that's what he did. Limp Bizkit guitarist Wes Borland would also defend Durst, instead blaming the festival's poor conditions. Jonathan Davis was present for Limp Bizkit's performance, along with Korn bassist Fieldy. Davis initially condemned Durst's conduct, though he would later opine that Durst's actions were not the primary catalyst for the violence. 9 Inch Nails frontman Trent Reznor later mocked Durst's actions during the festival in an October 1999 interview with Rolling Stone, telling them, "Fred Durst can surf a piece of plywood up my ass." In other notable incidents, the Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea walked on stage naked, addressing the crowd by jumping up and down while exposing his genitalia. Sheryl Crow reported that one audience member had thrown feces at her during her performance of My Favorite Mistake. She would later criticize the performance and the festival due to the behavior of the crowd, and stated that she had considered ending her set early out of disgust. She recalled the performance as the single worst gig I have ever had. The tension came to a head during the concert's final hours, as Red Hot Chili Peppers performed on the East Stage and Megadeth performed on the West Stage. Prior to the start of the performances that day, rumours arose about a possible unannounced performance following the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Prince, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, Guns N' Roses, and Michael Jackson were among the artists thought to be the secret closing act. Scher and Lang continued to hype up the finale of the festival during multiple press conferences earlier in the afternoon. Following the Chili Peppers performance, the finale was revealed to be a laser show and footage of Jimi Hendrix performing at the original festival in 1969, much to the anger of the attendees. The audience began to boo and attack the vendor booths in large groups. One fan shone a laser pointer at Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine in the middle of their performance, prompting him to criticize the crowd's behavior. A group of activists, led by the anti-gun violence organization PAX, had distributed candles to those stopping at their booth during the day, intending them to be lit for a candlelit vigil for the victims of the Columbine High School massacre during the Chili Peppers performance of Under the Bridge. This had not been mentioned to or approved by the local firefighting authorities. The crowd began to light the candles, with some using them to start bonfires. Plywood and trash strewn around the site were used to fuel the fires, which had spread to both stages by the end of the Chili Peppers and Megadeth performances. After the Red Hot Chili Peppers finished their main set, the audience was informed about a bit of a problem. An audio tower had caught fire. The local fire department was called to extinguish it, though they refused the call, fearing the audience. Shortly after the tower began to burn, a large group of concertgoers climbed the base of the scaffolding, and the tower collapsed onto the field. Rome Mayor Joe Griffo pleaded with the Chili Peppers to return to the stage and calm the crowd. Frontman Anthony Kiedis explained that there was nothing he could do to quell the aggressive crowd as the fires continued to grow. After the band were convinced to return to the stage, Kiedis remarked of the fires, "Holy shit, it's apocalypse now out there." Participants danced in circles around the fires, looking for more fuel. Some tore off plywood panels from the peace wall enclosing the festival grounds. ATMs were tipped over and broken into. Trailers full of merchandise, food, and equipment were forced open and burglarized, and numerous abandoned vendor booths or tents were turned over and set on fire. Approximately $22,000 in total was robbed from ATMs. Frightened festival staff barricaded themselves inside the control tower, while the few vendors still on site fled. Multiple media outlets blamed the Red Hot Chili Peppers for inciting the fires after performing a cover of the Jimi Hendrix song, Fire. Kiedis later wrote in his autobiography, Scar Tissue, that Hendrix's sister had instead asked them to play Fire in honor of Hendrix and his performance at the original Woodstock festival. He continued, "It was clear that this situation had nothing to do with Woodstock anymore. It wasn't symbolic of peace and love, but greed and cashing in." MTV was hired to cover the festival extensively. However, as the environment deteriorated, attendees grew increasingly hostile towards anchors and MTV staff. Carson Daly recalled being pelted with bottles, rocks, and batteries frequently while he was covering the festival, noting that executives from MTV issued a statement to their staff on site that the network's parent company, Viacom, could no longer guarantee their safety. The network ultimately evacuated its entire crew amidst the violence on Sunday night. Long-term anchor Kurt Loder likened the experience to covering news in a war zone, particularly during the final night as concertgoers began violently attacking the news trucks and reporters. It was dangerous to be around. The whole scene was scary. There were just waves of hatred bouncing around the place. It was clear we had to get out of there. It was like a concentration camp. To get in, you get frisked to make sure you're not bringing any water or food that would prevent you from buying from their outrageously priced booths. You wallow around in garbage and human waste. There was a palpable mood of anger. On the first day, a 44-year-old man identified as Scott L. Stanley succumbed to heat exhaustion in the campground. An attendee of Woodstock 1969, Stanley was attending with his 16-year-old foster son and other friends. The cause of death was later determined to be a heart attack. On Saturday, 24-year-old David DeRosier collapsed in the ground during Metallica's performance. Concert medical staff initially tried to treat his seizure and what they suspected to be a drug overdose. DeRosier was transported to the Air Force Base Medical Center and then airlifted to University Hospital in Syracuse. A little more than an hour after he collapsed, DeRosier's body temperature was 107 degrees Fahrenheit, or 42 degrees Celsius. The following afternoon, he fell into a coma. He died at 12:09 p.m. on Monday, July 26th, having never awoken. Tara Weaver, a 28-year-old woman from Troy, New York, was struck and killed by a speeding car while walking along an access road to leave the concert. Reports suggested that 42 to 44 people were arrested over the course of the festival. 10 state troopers and 2 state police supervisors were reportedly demoted or suspended for their behavior at the festival. A supervisor of 2 state troopers who had posed with naked female attendees was suspended. A New York State prison guard was charged with sodomizing a 15-year-old girl during the riots. 253 people had been treated at area hospitals. The official number of fans treated on site is between 4,000 and 4,500, yet Dr. Richard Caskew, one of the few area doctors who works the medical tents, says that he was told by Vualculo, who issued the official stats, that the numbers were far higher in the 8,000 to 10,000 range. The EMTs working at the festival's first aid tent were overwhelmed. At one point, they were treating 200 people an hour. Rome itself became a draw for attendees who patronized its bars, restaurants, and stores and stayed in its hotels for the concert's duration. The County Convention and Visitors Bureau estimated that festival attendees spent as much as $400 million in Rome over the weekend. After numerous lawsuits and fines resulting from incidents occurring during the event, the city of Rome only profited $200,000. Organizers raked in $600 million on ticket costs for a profit margin of $22 million. Food booths made about $73,000, according to Syracuse.com. After the conclusion of the festival, members of the National Organization for Women gathered outside the New York offices of one of the promoters to protest the sexual violence against women which had occurred. Police investigated 4 instances of rape that occurred during the concert. In October 2000, a woman sued the county and Michael Lang for personal injury over sexual assault at the festival. Numerous lawsuits were filed against the organizers over the poor environmental conditions. The New York Times solicited festival performers Rage Against the Machine for their opinion on the controversies surrounding the festival. Guitarist Tom Morello wrote in Neil Strauss's Times column on August 5, 1999, "Hey man, leave the kids alone. I've had enough of the frenzied demonization of young people surrounding Woodstock 99. Yes, Woodstock was filled with predators, the degenerate idiots who assaulted those women, the greedy promoters who wrung every cent out of thirsty concert-goers, and last but not least, the predator media that turned a blind eye to the real violence and scapegoated the 250,000 music fans at Woodstock 99, the vast majority of whom had the time of their lives." The post-festival cleanup of the site took 3 weeks. Rolling Stone magazine may have summed up Woodstock 99 perfectly when they wrote, "Woodstock 99 was supposed to celebrate the 30th anniversary of peace, love, and happiness. Instead, the festival earned the infamous distinction of the day the 90's died."